I inherited an old, rundown garage from my grandfather, while my sister got a two-bedroom condo in Miami. When my husband found out, he called me useless and kicked me out of the house. I decided to spend the night in the garage, but when I opened it, I froze at what I saw. The air in the lawyer's office was so stale, it felt like a museum exhibit on disappointment. It smelled of old paper, decades of faded coffee, and the quiet desperation of people forced to reckon with what was left behind. I sat on a stiff leather chair that squeaked with every nervous shift of my weight. My hands clasped so tightly in my lap, my knuckles were white. Next to me, my husband, Mark, wasn't fidgeting. Fidgeting would imply some level of anxiety or care. Instead, he was methodically scrolling through his phone, his thumb swiping up, 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 as if the fate of a multi-million-dollar real estate deal depended on it. He let out a low, impatient sigh, the only sound he'd made in 20 minutes. At 35, Mark was all polished surfaces, gleaming shoes, a watch that cost more than my first car, and a smile that could sell a swamp as a waterfront paradise. Across the heavy mahogany desk, my sister, Jessica, sat like a queen on her throne. At 35, the same age as Mark, she was the embodiment of success I was always measured against. Her blazer was perfectly tailored. Her blonde hair was done in an expensive, effortless-looking style, and the diamond on her finger caught the bleak office light and threw it back, twice as bright. She looked at me, a flicker of something she probably thought was sympathy in her eyes, and gave me a small, tight smile. The lawyer, a man named Mr. Henderson, whose face seemed permanently fixed in an expression of cautious neutrality, cleared his throat. "And now," he said, his voice a dry rustle, "we come to the primary assets of the estate of Franklin Carter, my grandfather, Gramps. The man who smelled of motor oil and sawdust, whose calloused hands could fix anything from a broken engine to a scraped knee." My heart ached. Mr. Henderson adjusted his glasses. To his elder granddaughter, Jessica Lane, Mr. Carter bequeaths his property located in South Beach, Miami, Florida. He paused to read the specifics. A two-bedroom condominium, Unit 7B, with an unobstructed ocean view. Jessica's small, tight smile vanished, replaced by an unmistakable, triumphant smirk she tried, and failed, to hide behind a manicured hand. "Oh my," she breathed, her voice dripping with calculated surprise. Mark's head finally snapped up from his phone, his eyes wide. He glanced from Jessica to me, his jaw tightening. And to his younger granddaughter, Sarah Miller, Mr. Henderson continued, turning a page. His pace seemed to slow, his voice dropping a notch. "Mr. Carter bequeaths his property and place of business, Frank's Auto Repair, located on the outskirts of Cleveland, Ohio." The silence that followed was heavier than the old mahogany desk. It filled the room, pressing down on me, sucking the air from my lungs. A garage. A rundown, grease-stained garage that had been closed for 5 years, ever since Gramps got too sick to work. Mark let out a short, sharp sound of disgust. A scoff that cut through the silence like a shard of glass. He didn't even try to hide it. Jessica, seizing her moment to be magnanimous, leaned forward. "Oh, Sarah, honey, I'm so sorry." Her pity was as fake as a $3 bill. "Well, you know how much he loved tinkering in that dusty old place. It's sentimental. Sentimental. That's what you called something worthless." The ride home in Mark's luxury sedan was somehow worse than the office. The steady drizzle that had started now slicked the Ohio streets, the rhythmic swish of the wipers counting out each agonizing second of silence. Mark's hands were clamped onto the steering wheel, his knuckles standing out like small white stones. We were barely a mile from the lawyer's office when he finally exploded. "A garage?" he spat, his voice a low, furious venom. "A worthless pile of bricks and oil stains on a piece of land that's zoned for nothing? That's what you get?" I flinched, staring out at the gray, blurry landscape. "Mark, please." "No, I won't, please," he yelled, slamming a hand against the dashboard. "Your sister gets $1 million condo on the beach, $1 million condo, and you get a shack. As a real estate agent, I know what that land is worth, Sarah. Practically nothing. It would cost more to tear it down than to sell it." Tears pricked my eyes, hot and shameful. It meant a lot to him. It was his whole life. His life? What about our life? He shot a look at me, his handsome face contorted with a rage that was terrifying. We've been living in that starter home for 8 years. I've been working my tail off trying to build something, and your big family inheritance, your big equalizer, is a pile of junk. You are useless, Sarah. Absolutely useless. The word hung in the air between us. Useless. It was like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my body, and I couldn't seem to draw another breath. The fight escalated the moment we pulled into the driveway of our tidy suburban house. The rain was coming down harder now, a miserable, cold downpour. He killed the engine, and we sat in the echoing silence of his fury. "I can't even look at you right now," he seethed. He got out, slamming the car door so hard the vehicle shook. I followed him numbly into the house, dripping water onto the pristine welcome mat. He was already in the entryway, his face a thunderous mask. Before I could even take my coat off, he snatched my purse from the entryway table and my small overnight bag, which was still packed from a weekend trip we'd taken. He didn't just hand them to me, he hurled them towards the open front door, where they landed with a dull thud on the wet porch. "What are you doing?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "Go sleep in your precious inheritance," he roared, his voice bouncing off the high ceilings. "Go see what your sentimental value is worth when it's 1 in the morning and you have nowhere else to go. Don't come back." He slammed the door in my face. The click of the deadbolt was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. For a long moment I just stood there on my own front porch, the cold rain plastering my hair to my face, soaking through my jacket. Heartbroken and humiliated, a deep, hollow ache spread through my chest. I fished my car keys out of my wet bag and checked my wallet. $28 and some change. There was only one place to go. The drive to the garage felt like a journey to another planet. The further I got from the manicured lawns of my neighborhood, the more the landscape decayed into forgotten industrial lots and run-down buildings. Finally, I saw it. Set back from the road, a dark, hulking silhouette against the rain-swept sky. The big Frank's Auto Repair sign, its letters faded and peeling, dangled from a single rusty chain, creaking eerily in the wind. Weeds choked the foundation, and the paint was peeling like sunburnt skin. I parked my car, the headlights cutting a lonely-looking path through the downpour. In my purse, my fingers closed around a single, old-fashioned key. Gramps had given it to me on my 16th birthday. "For emergencies, my little spark plug," he'd said with a wink, his eyes twinkling. "A girl should always have a place of her own." I'd laughed then. Now my hand shook as I walked to the huge roll-up garage door. The key felt heavy and cold in my palm. The lock was stiff from years of disuse, but with a grunt of effort, it turned with a loud clank. I grabbed the handle at the bottom of the door and, using all my weight, started to heave it upwards. It rose with a deafening groan of protesting metal, a sound of something old and forgotten being forced back to life. The darkness inside was absolute. A musty smell hit me, stale oil, old rubber, and something else, something clean, almost like wax. Taking a deep, shaky breath, I pulled out my phone and switched on the flashlight. The beam from my phone's flashlight cut through the gloom, painting a stripe of light across stacked tires, dusty workbenches littered with old tools, and forgotten calendars from a decade ago. It was exactly as I remembered it, a time capsule of my grandfather's life. My eyes began to well up again, and then the beam landed on a shape in the center of the garage. It was massive, covered by a heavy gray canvas tarp that was surprisingly free of dust. And I froze. My breath hitched in my throat, my mouth falling open in silent disbelief. Even under the thick, obscuring canvas, the silhouette was unmistakable. The sleek, aggressive lines, the low, wide stance, the iconic shape of a legend. My heart started pounding against my ribs, a frantic, wild drumbeat. It couldn't be. It was impossible. The thin beam of my phone's flashlight cut a nervous path through the thick, musty air. It smelled of old oil, cold metal, and a half-century of dust. For a long moment, I just stood there, paralyzed in the doorway, the rainy Cleveland night at my back, and a cavern of shadows before me. My breath hitched. Right in the center of the garage, looming like a slumbering beast, was a massive shape draped in a heavy, grease-stained canvas tarp. It was far too big to be a workbench or a stack of old tires. It had the distinct, unmistakable silhouette of a car. My heart hammered against my ribs. A car. Grandpa Frank hadn't driven in years. His old pickup truck had been sold off ages ago. With numb fingers, I fumbled with my phone, turning the flashlight to its brightest setting. The beam steadied, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air like tiny, frantic sprites. I took a hesitant step inside, my worn-out sneakers crunching on something gritty on the concrete floor. The silence was absolute, broken only by the drumming of the rain on the metal roof and the wild thumping in my own ears. My hands, still trembling from the fight with Mark and the soul-crushing cold, reached for the edge of the tarp. The canvas felt stiff and heavy, smelling faintly of engine grease and time itself. I took a deep breath, braced myself for whatever sad, rusted-out project lay beneath, and pulled. The tarp slid away with a heavy shush, releasing a final cloud of dust. And then, I stopped breathing. It wasn't a rust bucket. It wasn't a half-finished project. It was perfect. Staring back at me, gleaming even in the weak light of my phone, was a vision of American muscle. The paint was a deep, impossible Le Mans blue, so lustrous it looked like you could dive right into it. The chrome bumpers reflected my own stunned face in a distorted, wide-eyed mask. The aggressive lines, the iconic grille, the subtle ZL1 badge on the fender. It was a 1969 Chevrolet Camaro. But not just any Camaro. It was a legend. Even I, who knew next to nothing about cars, had heard whispers from my grandpa about this one. It was the Holy Grail. I stumbled back a step, feeling dizzy. This couldn't be real. Grandpa Frank was a simple, hard-working mechanic. He fixed transmissions and changed oil for the folks in our neighborhood. He wore grease-stained overalls and his hands were permanently calloused. A car like this, it was worth a fortune. More than Mark's real estate commissions for a whole year. Probably more than Jessica's Miami condo. My gaze fell on the steering wheel. Taped to the center was a small yellowed piece of notepaper folded in half. With a hand that shook so badly I could barely control it, I reached through the open driver's side window and plucked it free. The handwriting was his, that familiar, strong, slightly slanted script I'd seen on 100 birthday cards. For my little spark plug, it read, "The real work is what makes it valuable. Look under the hood." A sob caught in my throat. Spark plug. That was his name for me when I was a little girl, always asking a million questions as I followed him around this very garage. A fresh wave of grief washed over me, so sharp and sudden it buckled my knees, but it was mixed with a baffling sense of wonder. Following his instruction felt like a sacred duty. I walked to the front of the car and searched for the hood latch. My fingers found the small lever, and I pulled. With a satisfying thunk, the hood popped open. It was heavier than I expected, but I managed to lift it and secure it with the prop rod. I aimed my flashlight into the engine bay, and my jaw dropped all over again. The engine wasn't just clean, it was pristine. It was a monster of polished chrome and imposing black metal, a mechanical heart that looked like it had been assembled by a surgeon. And there, tucked neatly into a space on the engine block, was another note. This one felt different. The paper was crisper. "Heard you talking about that husband of yours on the phone last Thanksgiving. A man should value your heart, not your wallet. The key to your future is in my past." A cold shock went through me. He had heard, he knew. While I was hiding in the pantry, whispering to my best friend about how Mark was constantly complaining about money, about how he called my part-time library job a cute little hobby, my grandfather had been listening. Not to judge, but to understand. The shame I felt was instantly replaced by a profound aching love. The key to your future is in my past. What did that mean? My eyes scanned the garage, no longer seeing a junk pile but a treasure map. On a rickety metal shelf against the far wall sat a row of old spiral-bound notebooks. His work journals. I rushed over, pulling one down. The cover was smeared with grease, but the label, written in his hand, said 1985 to 1988. I flipped it open. Inside were detailed notes on engine rebuilds, diagrams of wiring harnesses, and parts numbers. But interspersed between the technical data were personal thoughts. "Jessica's too focused on the shine, not the engine," one entry read. Another, from years later. "Sarah's got my hands, she just doesn't know what to do with them yet." Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket, the vibration violent in the quiet garage. I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was Mark, a text. "This isn't funny, Sarah. Where are you?" I ignored it, my heart pounding with a strange new combination of fear and resolve. A moment later, another buzz. "Seriously, it's cold out there. Are you okay? I'm getting worried." The fake concern was so transparent it made me sick. I was just about to put the phone on silent when it rang, flashing a picture of my sister. My thumb hovered over the screen before I reluctantly answered. "Sarah? Oh, thank God. Mark called me. He was frantic." Jessica's voice was syrupy sweet, but with an undercurrent of steel I knew all too well. "Are you okay? Where did you go?" "I'm fine," I said, my own voice sounding hollow. "Well, where are you? Did you go to that old garage?" There was a pause. "Is there anything interesting in there? You know, Grandpa was always tinkering. I just hope he didn't leave you with a bunch of hazardous waste to clean up." She wasn't asking about me. She was fishing. She wanted to know if my pile of bricks had a secret prize inside. For the first time in my life, a lie came to me easily, protectively. "No, Jess, it's just old junk. Broken tools, rusty parts. Smells awful. I'm going to a motel." "Oh, well, okay then." Her voice lost its feigned warmth, becoming clipped and businesslike. "Call me tomorrow." She hung up. I let out a shaky breath and turned back to the journals. I felt like I was in a race against time. I frantically paged through the last one, dated just a few years ago. Near the back, I found a sketch of the garage's back wall, the one with the big heavy tool cabinet against it. There was an arrow pointing to the floor behind the cabinet, with a note scrawled beside it. "A weak foundation needs reinforcing. Sometimes you have to hide your strength where no one thinks to look." The tool cabinet was massive and filled with heavy wrenches and sockets. It took all my strength, grunting and shoving, to move it even a few inches from the wall. And there, low on the cinder block wall, just as the drawing implied, was a single brick whose mortar looked newer, different from the rest. My fingers scraped at the edges. It was loose. I wiggled it back and forth until it came free, revealing a dark, hollow space inside. My phone's light showed me the prize, a small, gray metal lockbox. I pulled it out. It was heavy. There was a simple keyhole on the front, but it was unlocked. With trembling fingers, I lifted the lid. Inside, resting on a bed of yellowed cheesecloth, were official-looking documents. A certificate of authenticity for a numbers-matching all-aluminum ZL1 engine. A clear title for a 1969 Chevrolet Camaro with the VIN matching the one on the car's dashboard. And the owner's name printed in crisp, clear type, Sarah Jenkins. My name. Beneath the papers was one last letter in a sealed envelope simply addressed to Sparkplug. My hands shook as I opened it. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, it means the lawyers have done their job and I'm gone. I'm sorry to have left you, but I'm not sorry for this. I can picture the look on your slick husband's face. That man is a shiny suit with nothing inside, all chrome and no engine. I heard the way he talked to you, the way he made you feel small. I knew he'd see a condo in Miami as a pile of cash, and that's all. I knew Jessica would too. She'd cash out and never think twice about the view. But you were always different. You were the one who saw the beauty in how things worked. This car isn't a thing, Sarah. It's my life's work. I spent 30 years finding the parts, restoring every last bolt. It was my passion, and I saved it for the one person I knew would understand what it really means. It's not about the money, though there's plenty of it. It's about the love and the labor. It's proof that you can build something incredible out of what other people overlook. This car is your escape route, your fresh start. Don't let Mark or Jessica or anyone else try to take it from you. It's yours. Legally and morally, it is yours. When you're ready, Call my only trusted friend. His name is Dave Miller. He's a classic car broker, and he's the only one besides me who knows this car exists. He'll know what to do. His number is here." Underneath his signature, he'd written Dave's number and one final sentence. Reading it, I felt a lifetime of being the quiet one, the simple one, the useless one, just fall away. Don't let anyone tell you what you're worth. Build your own engine. I sank to the floor, the letter clutched in my hand, tears streaming down my face. They weren't tears of sadness or humiliation anymore. They were tears of pure, unadulterated hope. I looked from the letter to the phone in my other hand, then back to the magnificent blue car that stood waiting for me in the dark. I had my grandfather's final instructions. I had the key to my future, right here in this dusty old garage. My fingers were shaking so badly, it took 3 tries to dial the number from the letter. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the dusty silence of the garage. The phone rang once, twice, a third time. I was about to hang up, thinking it was a dead end, a 20-year-old number for a friend who'd long since moved on. Then a gravelly voice answered. "Yeah?" Hello," I stammered, my own voice sounding small and foreign. I'm looking for a Mr. Dave Miller?" There was a suspicious pause. "Who's asking?" "My name is Sarah. My grandfather was Frank Miller. He left me a note." The change was immediate. The gruff suspicion in his voice vanished, replaced by a sudden sharp focus. "Frank's granddaughter? Where are you right now?" "I'm at his old garage, the one on the edge of town. Don't touch anything. Don't let anyone in. Are you safe?" he asked, his tone now wrapped in a surprising layer of concern. I think so, yes." "Okay, I'm 20 minutes out. I'm coming. Just stay put, kid." The line went dead. I slid down the cold steel fender of the Camaro, the phone slipping from my sweaty palm. 20 minutes. It felt like an eternity. With every passing second, the reality of the situation began to settle in. Not like a soft blanket, but like a ton of bricks. This car wasn't just a car. It was a secret. It was a statement. It was my grandfather reaching through time to hand me a lifeline. Dave arrived in a dusty Ford F-150 that looked like it had seen as many decades as he had. He was a man carved from oak and engine grease, with kind eyes set in a landscape of wrinkles. He gave me a quick, appraising nod, then his gaze fell on the Camaro. He stopped, breathing. I actually saw the air leave his lungs in a silent whoosh. He walked towards it slowly, almost reverently, like a man approaching a sacred altar. He didn't touch it at first, just circled it, his eyes scanning every line, every inch of the chrome trim that gleamed under the single bare bulb I'd found, and switched on. "Le Mans blue," he whispered, more to himself than to me. He finally reached out a calloused hand and gently traced the ZL1 emblem on the fender. "Frank, you magnificent son of a gun, you actually did it." He looked at me, his eyes wide with a professional's awe. "Kid, do you have any idea what this is?" I shook my head, mute. "This is a 1969 Chevrolet Camaro ZL1, all aluminum 427. They only made 69 of them. It's the Holy Grail. But this one." He ran a pocket light over the engine bay, peering at serial numbers on the block. "It's numbers matching. All original parts. The documentation." I pointed to the metal box on the workbench. He opened it and sifted through the papers, his breathing growing heavier. He pulled out the official title, clean and clear in my name, and a stack of authenticated documents. "In this condition? With this provenance?" He shook his head, looking from the car to me and back again. "It's not just a car, Sarah. It's a legend. At auction, you're looking at well over $750,000, maybe more. A collector would lose their mind for this." $750,000. The number didn't even sound real. It was an abstract concept, a flight of fancy. I felt dizzy, lightheaded, and had to grip the workbench to keep from swaying. Useless, Mark had called me. A worthless pile of bricks and oil stains. As if summoned by the thought, a horrifying screech of tires tore through the quiet night outside. A car door slammed. Headlights cut a vicious slash across the garage entrance. My blood ran cold. It was Mark's BMW. He stormed in, his face a thundercloud of fury.
"There you are. I've been calling you for hours. What is your pro—" He stopped dead. His eyes, which had been locked on me with pure rage, drifted over to the gleaming blue machine behind me. The anger on his face melted away, contorting into something far uglier. Pure, slobbering greed. His jaw went slack. "Sarah, baby," he cooed, his voice a sick, syrupy version of what I used to think was affection. "You didn't tell me. Oh my God, you didn't tell me. We're rich, we're rich." He lunged past me, not for me, but for the workbench where the old-fashioned keys lay. "Give me the keys." Before I could react, another car screeched to a halt right behind his. A sleek, white Mercedes. Jessica. My heart sank into the pit of my stomach. He had called her. Of course he had. She stepped out, looking annoyed. "Mark, why did you drag me out to this dump? What is going on?" She stepped into the garage, and her words died in her throat. Her perfectly made-up face went pale. "Oh my God," she gasped, her eyes, just like Mark's, fixated on the car. They weren't seeing a work of art or a piece of history. They were seeing a dollar sign. Her shock lasted a split second before it curdled into indignation. "Grandpa made a mistake," she shrieked, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at the Camaro. "That's a family asset. It should be sold and the money split." The will was unbalanced. The garage, my sanctuary, suddenly felt small and suffocating as the two of them descended like vultures. "It's half mine. I'm her husband," Mark snarled at Jessica, physically placing himself between her and the car. "We are married. This is a marital asset." "Don't be ridiculous," Jessica shot back. "She only inherited it today. She inherited it from my grandfather. That's family money." They were shouting over each other, their greedy, furious voices echoing off the concrete walls. They gestured and pointed, carving up my future right in front of me, not once looking my way. I wasn't a person to them. I was an obstacle, a hurdle on their way to a payday. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. The years of being the quiet one, the lesser one, the one who apologized for taking up space, it all burned away. My grandfather's words from the letter echoed in my head. "Don't let anyone tell you what you're worth. Build your own engine." I took a deep breath and stepped between them and the hood of the car. "No." The word was quiet, but it cut through their shouting like a razor. They both stopped and stared at me, genuinely surprised that I had spoken. My voice shook, but I held their gaze. "This is mine." I turned to Mark, my husband, the man who had vowed to cherish me. "You," I said, my voice gaining strength with every word, "called me useless. You threw me and my clothes out of our house. We are done. You can talk to my divorce lawyer." His face went from greedy to apoplectic. Then I turned to my sister, who stared at me as if I'd grown a second head. "And you," I said, my voice dripping with the hurt she'd inflicted my whole life. "You got a condo with an ocean view. You got exactly what you wanted. Grandpa gave me his heart. He gave this to me." I took another step forward, feeling a power I never knew I possessed. "Now both of you, get out of my property." Mark scoffed. "You can't be serious, Sarah. Don't be a fool." Jessica crossed her arms. "We're not going anywhere. We need to have a family discussion about this." I looked at them, at their entitled, furious faces, and I felt nothing but a cold, clear certainty. The weak, scared woman who had driven here hours ago was gone. I calmly reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and unlocked the screen. Their smug expressions faltered as I held it up. "Fine," I said, my voice steady. "I'm dialing 911. I'm reporting 2 trespassers on my private property." The immediate aftermath was a ringing silence, punctuated only by the distant wail of sirens fading into the rainy Cleveland night. Mark and Jessica were gone, escorted off the property by 2 very unimpressed police officers who had listened patiently to my trespassing complaint. Dave, who had been a silent, solid mountain of a man throughout the entire fiasco, let out a slow, heavy breath.
"You okay, kid?" he asked, his gruff voice softer than I'd ever heard it. My hands were still trembling. I looked at the Camaro, its Le Mans blue paint gleaming under the single bare bulb I'd managed to get working. It was the eye of the hurricane, a perfect, calm center in the storm that had just ripped through my life. "I don't know what I am," I confessed, my voice barely a whisper, "but I'm not useless." The next few days were a blur of messy, necessary actions. The first thing I did was call a lawyer. I found a woman online, Ms. Albright, whose website specialized in complex divorces. When I explained the situation over the phone, the inheritance, Mark's explosive reaction, him kicking me out, then showing up demanding his half, she was quiet for a moment. "He abandoned you, Sarah," she said, her voice sharp and clear. "Then he tried to intimidate you to gain access to an asset that is legally and solely yours as an inheritance. His claim to this car as a marital asset is practically non-existent. We're going to shut him down hard." Hearing her say it gave me a sliver of solid ground to stand on. Mark, however, wasn't going down without a scorched earth campaign. My phone started blowing up with notifications. Jessica had taken to Facebook. She posted a picture of her and me from years ago, all smiles at a family barbecue. The caption was a masterclass in passive aggression. "So heartbroken over the recent drama in our family after Grandpa's passing," it read. "Some people let greed get the better of them, and it's tearing us all apart. Thinking of you, Sarah, and hoping you remember what's truly important. Hashtag family over everything." The comments were a fresh wave of humiliation. Aunts and cousins I hadn't spoken to in years were weighing in. "I can't believe it, Jessica. Your sister should be ashamed," one wrote. "Some people are just opportunists," commented another. My Aunt Linda, my mom's sister, just posted a series of sad face emojis under Jessica's post, a digital condemnation that stung more than any angry words. My own family was painting me as a villain, a greedy monster who had somehow stolen from them, all for an old car they hadn't even known existed a week ago. I had to turn off my phone. The venom was too much. A few days later, I met Dave back at the garage. The legal battle was beginning to churn, and Ms. Albright needed crystal-clear copies of all the documentation from the lockbox. We spread the papers out on the old workbench, the air thick with the smell of old oil and new possibilities. "All right, here's the official title, clear as a bell, in your name," Dave said, sliding the pristine document into a protective plastic sleeve. "Here's the car's original bill of sale, the provenance records. Frank kept everything, I'll give him that. A true perfectionist." My eyes were scanning the papers, the ink a tangible link to my grandfather. Tucked behind the car's title, almost hidden, was a thick manila envelope I hadn't paid much attention to in the initial chaos. It felt heavier, more substantial than the rest. "What's this?" I asked, pulling it out. The tab was simply labeled FFR. Dave squinted at it. "FFR? Don't know." I unclasped the metal tab and slid out a stack of papers. They weren't yellowed with age like Grandpa's notes. They were crisp, modern, and official looking. On the top sheet, in bold letters, I read the words, Articles of Incorporation. Beneath it, a name, Frank's Finest Restorations, LLC. I looked at Dave, completely baffled. LLC? Grandpa had a business? Dave's face went pale. He snatched the paper from my hand, his eyes scanning it frantically. No, I have a business," he muttered, more to himself than to me. He flipped through the pages, his breath catching. He stopped on a page titled Operating Agreement. He pointed a trembling, grease-stained finger at a signature line. There, next to his own name, David Chen, member, was another signature. Franklin Miller, member. "Sarah," Dave said, his voice cracking. He looked up from the paper, his eyes wide with a look I couldn't decipher. It was a mix of shock, awe, and something else, reverence. "This document states that your grandfather, Frank Miller, was the silent 50% owner of my classic car restoration business." I just stared at him. The words didn't compute. "Your business? But how?" He sank onto a nearby stool, holding the papers like they were a sacred text. Frank was my mentor. He taught me everything. When I wanted to go legit, start a real company, I didn't have a dime. He funded the whole thing. He said he didn't want his name on the sign, didn't want the hassle. He just wanted a silent partnership. I paid him his share every quarter in cash, just like he wanted. It was our arrangement. He looked around the dusty, dilapidated space. This garage, this address. He flipped back to the first page of the incorporation papers. This is the legally registered headquarters of the company. It's not just a garage, Sarah. My brain was spinning, trying to catch up. The car, the letter, the lawyer, the smear campaign. It all felt like part of a different, smaller story. My gaze fell to the final page of the operating agreement. It was a succession clause. In the event of the passing of Franklin Miller, all shares, ownership, and rights pertaining to his 50% stake in Frank's Finest Restorations LLC are to be transferred in full to his granddaughter, Sarah Jenkins. My grandfather hadn't just inherited me a car. He hadn't just given me an escape route. He had made me his partner. I wasn't just the owner of a priceless Camaro. I was the co-owner of a thriving, six-figure business. That worthless pile of bricks and oil stains, as Mark had called it, wasn't just my inheritance, it was my company. It's funny how much can change in a year. Looking around the shop now, it feels like a different universe from the dark, oil-soaked tomb I first stepped into that rainy night. 12 months. It feels like a lifetime. The air here no longer smells of rust and forgotten promises. Instead, there's a clean, almost antiseptic scent of high-grade polish, fresh paint, and the faint, satisfying aroma of new leather. The grimy, cracked concrete floor is gone, replaced by a polished, sealed gray expanse that gleams under the bright, energy-efficient LED lights hanging from the new steel rafters. Where my grandfather's dusty, cobweb-covered workbenches once stood, there are now rolling stainless steel tool chests and hydraulic lifts, all neatly organized. The business isn't just thriving, it's immaculate. We cleaned up nice. I tapped the final Approved button on my tablet, sending the parts order for a '67 Mustang Fastback we're restoring. The client, a tech CEO from out of state, just signed off on the estimate without blinking. A year ago, I would have been terrified to even speak to someone like that. Today, I walked him through every line item of the six-figure restoration plan with a confidence that feels as natural as breathing. Dave, bless his heart, is the soul of the workshop. He's the master of the engines, the genius who can hear a misfiring piston from a mile away. He runs the floor, his gruff voice a constant reassuring hum as he guides our team of mechanics. My grandfather knew what he was doing when he partnered with Dave. He saw the rare combination of unparalleled skill and honest-to-God integrity. My role is different. I found my passion not under the hood, but in the heart of the business itself. I handle the clients, the marketing, the finances, the impossible task of sourcing rare, original parts from all corners of the globe. I'm the one who tells the story of each car, who builds the bridge between a client's dream and the metal masterpiece taking shape on our floor. My grandfather gave me an engine, but I learned how to build the whole car around it. The legal mess is finally over. My divorce from Mark is final. The judge basically laughed his claim out of court. The moment my lawyer presented the texts he sent me, the ones where he called me useless and told me to go sleep in the garage, it was over. His abandonment of me that night voided any claim he thought he had to my inheritance as a marital asset. He tried to play hardball, but he had no ground to stand on. He walked away with nothing but the commissions from the last houses he sold, before his reputation as a greedy, opportunistic leech started to precede him. I haven't heard from him directly since the final papers were signed. Good riddance. Jessica is another story. After she was escorted off my property, she tried to turn the entire family against me. Her Facebook posts were works of fiction, painting me as a cold, manipulative schemer who had somehow tricked our grandfather. It hurt, I won't lie. It stung to see aunts and cousins I'd known my whole life side with her, blinded by the glitter of her Miami condo. But over time, her story started to fall apart. When people learned the truth, that Mark had thrown me out, that I'd inherited a business, not just a car, and that I was working tirelessly to build something real in Grandpa Frank's name, the tide began to turn. My relationship with Jessica is non-existent now. We're strangers who share a bloodline. I've come to terms with it. She made her choice, and I made mine. The clock on the wall reads 7 p.m. The mechanics have all gone home, wiping grease from their hands. Dave pokes his head out of his office. "Locking up, Sarah?" "In a minute," I call back with a smile. "Just finishing up here." He nods, giving me a familiar thumbs up before disappearing. I power down my tablet and walk through the quiet shop. My footsteps echo softly in the cavernous space. My destination is the centerpiece of it all. In the middle of the main floor, encased in a custom-built, glass-walled showroom, sits the 1969 Camaro ZL1. Under the showroom lights, the Le Mans blue paint looks like a pool of liquid midnight. It's not a car, it's a legend. It's the heart of Frank & Daughter Restorations, a constant reminder of where this all started. I had more than a dozen offers for it in the first 6 months, some well north of Dave's initial estimate, but selling it never felt right. It wasn't about the money. It was the physical proof that my grandfather saw me, that he believed in me when no one else did, including myself. It's his love forged in steel and chrome. I key in the code and the glass door slides open with a quiet whoosh. I walk over to the car, the air inside the showroom perfectly climate-controlled. I run my hand along the cool, smooth curve of the fender, the texture as familiar to me now as my own skin. Leaning against the hood, I look out through the glass at the empire I helped build. An empire that grew from a pile of bricks and oil stains. I think of Mark's sneering face, his voice dripping with disgust. Useless. The word has no power over me anymore. It's just a ghost, a faint echo from a different life. I gently pat the hood, my whisper barely disturbing the silent air. "We did it, Gramps." A small, genuine smile touches my lips. We really did it. I slide the glass door shut, locking my grandfather's heart safely away for the night. I grab my purse and keys from my office and walk out the main door, pulling the heavy roll-up down with a satisfying thud. The evening air is cool and crisp. I click the remote for my own car, a modern, practical SUV, reliable and safe. It's nothing flashy, but it's mine. I paid for it with my own hard-earned money. As I drive away, the warm glow of the Frank & Daughter sign illuminates the street behind me. I glance at it in the rearview mirror, a beacon in the darkening night. I was once a woman who was told she was worthless, kicked out of her own home. Now, I am the proud owner of my own life, built with my own hands, from the foundation of a rundown garage.